Welcome, everybody. I'm joined today by Reality Check, Just Denny, Kate, Big Jeff, Kelly, and Calf will be here shortly. This focus of today's discussion is Ryan Hilgis, and due to the fact that we just got the response back from the state, and I'm going to let Jeff talk a little bit about that.
Hey, thanks, Mobility. So we know that Zellner filed her brief, and she had identified Ryan Hilligis as a possible Denny suspect, and the reason for that was that according to her anyway, Ryan Hilligis is the one that provided law enforcement with the day planner that had handwritten notes on it that Zellner says were taken, and she has an affidavit that indicates that they were taken while Teresa Halbach was en route to her photography. I think there's actually two handwritten things on there. I'm not sure whether she has affidavits for both of them, because according to Zellner, she did not have enough time to make it back home before she made it to the first appointment, Stephen Schmitz in Sheboygan. She had to have written that in the car, and how could anybody possibly have gotten that day planner if she had been physically writing on it on her way, to those appointments? It had to be in the RAV. So how did he get it? And of course, in addition to that, he's obviously the ex-boyfriend. He did have sexual relations. We know about, he got in a fight in a party. We know that Teresa turned down a photography shoot, which is probably where she makes her big money for a wedding, because she knew that he was going to be at that wedding. And in the state's response to Zellner with regard to Ryan Hilligis, they made a couple of claims. Probably the most damaging one to Zellner is that the fact that he's a viable Denny suspect was what they called insufficiently pled, which means that she didn't do a good enough job explaining and persuading how he could possibly be the one to have killed Teresa, because he would have had to break into Stephen's house and clean the blood out of the sink, etc. And I think that part of the Zellner's quote unquote theory is left over from Stephen's initial pro se response in 2013. So she doesn't even really have the option to change that if she wants to, right? We all probably think that blood might have come from the blood vial or might have come from the Grand Am. But when Stephen filed this pro se thing in 2013, I believe he used that story, and Zellner's kind of stuck with that story, whether she likes it or not. But that all being said, I think the reason why we're really here is, to examine the viability of Ryan as a Denny suspect, and being ex-boyfriend, and and indicating at trial that he never really felt like a suspect. It would be good to do some real investigation on Ryan from somebody who knows what they're talking about. And fortunately, we have somebody in the panel who can lend a hand on that, don't we, Kelly?
Yes. So this is a little bit of a surprise for everyone. Over the weekend, I got the privilege in interviewing a very, very close friend of mine. But due to the special guest status and the work he does, unfortunately, I can't disclose his identity or talk too much about him. So instead of using his name, he was asked to be introduced as Investigator T from the West Australian Police Force. Throughout the interview, I used two categories. One was based on Ryan and his overall professional observations, and the second was more of a general profile of people that commit murders. So yeah, it is a pre-recorded video interview. Because he couldn't make it today, they said if he has any questions for him, I'm going to happily write them down, pass them on to him. So the next time we go live, I can read out the answers. So yeah, I did interview a very, very well professional, without giving the status of his title. Let's just say he's very up there in the law. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it and forgive me, because I was so excited I do sound a little bit too overexcited in the interview. But yeah, you guys can hear it for yourself.
All right. Well, I'm going to play the interview now. So here we go.
Welcome and hello, Investigator T.
Hello everyone, how are you?
Very well. We really appreciate you taking the time to come on and have a chat. With all your expertise and experience, your professional opinion will help us followers of the Making a Murderer case get a clearer understanding on the behaviours of the perpetrators that commit these crimes. Before we just start though, I just want to thank a few supporters from behind the scenes that have helped with the documentations that I sent to you so you could study and help me put these questions together. Just quickly there, Millbilly, T1, Big Jeff, Just the Denny, Caf, Bron, Reality Check, Kaboom, Holly C, Maya, Joras, and Kate. All right, Investigator T, are you ready?
Yeah, fire away.
All right, so obviously I sent you some documentations and I asked you to do some profiling and stuff. I based it on the Ryan side of it because at this point in time, Ryan's a significant Denny suspect, Kathleen likes to say. So, yeah, I just wanted you to get a bit of a feel of his character, his body language when you watched his videos I sent you. But the first question I've got, it's more of a generalized question. It's what are the statistics that a partner / ex / family member commits this kind of crime versus an opportunity random kill?
Anecdotally, it's quite uncommon for the suspect of a murder to be someone who wasn't known to the victim.
Mm-hmm.
I had a quick look on Google today. Around 85% of the murders that were committed this year were committed by someone who knew the victim, whether it was a spouse or a friend or gang members that know each other or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's quite rare for strangers to commit a murder, and if they do, it usually involves some sort of case of mistaken identity or a crime gone wrong, like a rape or burglary, something like that, where the killing is not the end goal. It wasn't intended in the first place. Except in cases like serial killers, where obviously the objective is to actually kill someone. So it's actually quite rare for the perpetrator to be not known to the subject.
Yeah, without indulging obviously too much into your work of like your work, because I know we have to protect like your aspects of that. Some of if there's been cases you have seen, a lot of the crimes that you have gone to, is it usually like things you know or whatever? Again, is that fall into that category?
Yeah,
or it's always
I've worked on numerous homicides and serious assaults and that sort of thing, and the vast majority have been the offenders have been known to the victim.
Yeah.
It's really rare that something is just a random attack.
Yeah.
And if it is, there's a whole range of motives, like being drug affected and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other main one would be something where like a burglary has gone wrong or something like that. But the overwhelming majority of offenders have known their victims.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for that one. Question number 2, what are the statistics that someone who commits a murder inserts themselves into the investigation? This one I actually like because the Ryan situation itself, you know, as a Denny suspect, he led the researchers and the civilian people when he was giving maps out, he was giving personal phone numbers. So he inserted himself a lot. He even went and moved into Teresa's house after the fact. So what are the statistics that they do that, like if someone inserts themselves?
I don't actually have any statistics to per se, but just going on what FBI profilers have done, it's not uncommon at all for people to, if they're not inserting themselves intentionally into the case, they just try to assimilate themselves in some way, like trying to be helpful, like putting themselves forward as like volunteering themselves as a suspect in the hope that it looks like they're actually trying to be make it appear that they're interested or that they want to clear themselves, but they're actually trying to help.
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon at all, especially when you read FBI profilers books about how people insert themselves, like Wayne Wallace, the guy that was killing all the black kids in the 70s. That's quite well known. He was inserting himself and helping broadcasting flyers and that sort of thing when he was actually the perpetrator. So it's pretty common.
Wow, that's funny you should say that, because Ryan was actually the one that was giving out maps and everything as well. But yeah, thanks for that. Question number 3. How likely is it that someone close to a victim could be capable of dismembering and burning a body?
Again, the homicides that I've worked on or been involved with, it's a hard one. It's quite rare. But I think one of the main ones I was involved with was actually because the victims are known by the perpetrator.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing for them to do.
Yeah.
At least they're actually motivated a lot to try and get rid of evidence and stuff like that. But the ones that I've worked on, it's actually quite rare, and it's definitely next level sort of thinking to dismember someone or burn someone. Most of the victims I've dealt with they've just been left in situ. They haven't been posed or anything like that. So it's hard. I'm sure it's happened before, but just from my experience, I can't really recall anyone being actually dismembered.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for that one. I always thought that, like, if you had murdered someone you loved, and especially if it was a fit of rage, to go that extra step and mutilate them would be a really hard thing. Like, that might be when the remorsefulness comes into it and all that. So, yeah, that's been a curiosity of mine. Question 4, based on the information that I provided you with Ryan in this case, could you please give us an overall profile, like the body language that you saw? That was like the interviews I sent you with him in court and the interviews he had with the media.
Yeah. It's only really brief. It's quite hard to get an accurate profile of someone just based on what you sent me. But my initial impressions were that when he was getting asked the questions, it looked like he was making stuff up on the go. He wasn't. But when you answer a question, there's little visual cues, I suppose, that you can look for. Like they say that sometimes, like if you're lying, you look down and to the left and that sort of thing. But if you're not focusing on the person asking the questions, if you're just sort of staring off into the middle distance, it looks like you're thinking of the answer. It didn't look like he was actually recounting what he was doing. He was just making it up as he was going along. Kind of like, I suppose, being a parent, you see your kids or other people, just trying to make up stories, and you can see that it's obviously they're not really recounting what's actually happened. They're just making it up as they're going along.
Yeah.
He seemed quite smarmy as well, and quite cocky. It's not an indication of guilt. I think it's just it shows an attitude.
Yeah.
Like a pretty cold attitude, to be honest. Though.
Yeah, I agree with that one. A lot of us that have watched that, we're all like, he gives that smiling delight. That's when they're answering a question, they kind of got that slight smirk on their face, like they're like, I know something you don't. But it's like you said, it's not that they're guilty, it's just that they're got that cockiness about them as well. So it's interesting you said that.
Yeah, it doesn't ring as truth. He never rang to me as truthful. I don't know. There's just something in his tone or something like that just didn't sit right.
Yeah. Next question. How likely is it the killer would plant evidence, for example, in this case, bones, close to someone else, trying to frame them?
Again, I've dealt with a few homicides and been involved in them, and there have been a number of occasions where they've tried to throw investigators off their tracks by wearing disguises or setting up circumstances so that they may appear to be somewhere else as opposed to where they're actually saying they are. Things like mobile phone towers, where they might say that they were there at a certain location, and the mobile tower might, off their mobile phone, might ping that location, but they might be on the extreme edge of that tower range and not actually be where they said they were. Yeah, and it's a plenty of evidence. I mean, it's just human nature to try and avoid prosecution or getting found out, especially for a murder. So it boils down to simple things like children, eating a bunch of lollies and then stashing the lolly wrappers under their brother's pillow or something, so they don't get found out and blame that on someone else.
Absolutely.
So it's as old as time. I mean, I'm sure there's biblical stories about that sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny you should mention the towers, and because that's such a significant part of this case. With the last ping that we have of Teresa, her phone went to a voice message, and that was it. She wiped off the face of the earth. So it's funny you should mention that, which in a few of our podcasters with Big Jeff in Foul Play and Millbilly and other people and the researchers have actually delved into these kind of questions. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that. So that's awesome. Yeah, wow. Question number 6. This one's a bit different. How likely is it that the killer would have some kind of connection to the place he dumps remains?
Anecdotally speaking, again, I didn't do any real research on it, but just with the cases and investigations I've been involved in, the vast majority operate where they're comfortable. They know the area, they know the routes, they know where they can leave stuff, they know how to get away. So it's a criminal indicator, or it's an indicator of criminal activity just by being comfortable in the environment that they're in. So we get cross-border offences quite often, but say, for example, offenders might cross a border from a different district into our district and steal a car or do a crime. They will go back and dump the car back where they live, or not far from where they live, and they'll have a dropped car somewhere. So it's very common for people, or criminals, to operate in the environments that they're comfortable with, because obviously they have to have a degree of security.
Yeah.
Most criminals don't want to get caught, so it just gives them a feeling of comfort, I suppose, and working in their comfort zones, and they don't generally go out of their way to operate in environments that they're not familiar with. So, in the case of of dumping remains, it would have to be somewhere where they are familiar with, where they know people, they're not going to get found. They know that the local traffic might be really slow or non-existent. Little backtracks and that sort of thing where they know people don't go. So you have to have some sort of local knowledge if you're actually trying to ditch something, because if you don't and you're not aware of your local environment, for all you know, you could be dumping your body remains on the side of a frequently used freeway. You have no idea. But for the most part, they just hang around spots where they know and where they're comfortable.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Question, next one. This was actually really, really interesting, because a lot of us researchers have noticed something that doesn't seem right in this part. In your experience, when someone is missing, how often do the police go to the premises of the victim? Is it normal to have a total of 136 visits in 12 days?
No, not in my experience. No, not at all. It just depends on the circumstances. If someone's reported missing at the initial stages, uniform officers will go to the house, obviously, because that's the first place they'll go looking for someone. If there's no obvious signs of foul play, or there's nothing to indicate that there's anything that's gone wrong, they'll leave the house either secure or in the hands of someone who, like a family member, and then they might canvass the neighbourhood and find out if anyone's got camera footage or anyone that has seen anything. But once they've established that there's no real reason to secure the house at all, then generally it's on the books, but it's not a focus for the investigation. If they find anything, obviously, like if they find a blood trail or they find signs of forced entry or something like that, then obviously the house gets locked down and gone over with a fine-tooth comb, because that's most likely a scene, one of not many. But to visit a house 130 odd times in 12 days is bizarre. I don't really see why that would happen unless they were going back to collect evidence over and over and over again, in which case I don't understand that either, because if that was the case, then the house would have been locked down, the forensic area would have been set up around it so that no one could go in or out, and that forensic evidence would be preserved. But yeah, it didn't make sense at all. I couldn't really understand why that would happen.
Yeah. What if I told you that Ryan actually went in and inserted himself into that house after her being missing and started staying there?
And of its own, it's not indicative of any guilt, I don't think. But if you take a certain standpoint on the fact that he may be involved in it, it would be a clever move on his part, because any evidence, obviously, in the house that may link him to any kind of ill act will be tampered with, and it becomes inadmissible.
Yeah.
Especially if it's post the act, because you can't prove what went on before he went in there, and afterwards it's just any kind of evidence that you're going to bring out of the house has been tainted. So it's of no benefit at all. Once he's in the house, then you might as well write that whole house off as a crime scene, because it can be explained away quite easily.
Yeah. This one's definitely a right one, this question. In all the documentations that I sent you and the videos you saw about Ryan, is there anything that causes concern or stands out for him in particular that you saw?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the main one that you pointed out to me was the planner.
Yes, the planner. Yes.
Because if that was known to the investigators who are doing the investigation, it would have to be, again, it's not an indication of guilt, but it ties him to the victim. And if she had that after the last time he said he saw her, then the question begs to be asked, how did he get it?
Yeah.
And then the whole thing is just odd. He's had so much access and time and opportunity to be able to tamper with evidence, to tamper with scenes, to plant evidence and that sort of thing. It's just, I don't know, he's given far too much leeway to be able to manipulate the clues and stuff that the coppers will be finding to point in certain directions.
Absolutely, and that's what I mean. It takes you back to the fact that he was leading the search parties. He was taking all the phone calls for the family on behalf of the police force. He was doing all the step-ins, so he was taking control of everything. So again, if he had any kind of part in this crime, he was inserting himself in all the areas. Like you said, he's now able to clean up after himself and put his DNA in the places that, they would have found, which is now tainted. So, yeah, I agree. And with that day planner, it's part of KZ's, in her briefing, the motion that it's a concern. Like, how is it that this guy has this day planner? It has written stuff on it which shouldn't have been there. There's times and phone calls that link up that says that she had that in her car the day she went missing. So if she never made it home, how did he get it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know how he's able to explain that one away. I haven't seen the interview notes, so
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see the full interview.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that one away.
Just another question, just to kind of start to wrap this up, because I don't want to keep you too long, and this has been great. But can you just walk us through like the basic steps you take to eliminate as a suspect? So if you're going to eliminate him as a suspect, what steps would your task take to start narrowing him down to either eliminate him or go, shit, we've got a problem here?
Yeah, it depends on the crime scene. The crime scene examinations.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, anything that you pull from a crime scene that links someone to it will determine how much of a suspect that person is. If they examine the crime scene and didn't find any of his DNA anywhere or any kind of link for him to have been involved in the offence, then obviously he would be written off as a suspect. He'd still be, I don't know, he'd still be on the books as a suspect, but he wouldn't be the prime suspect, I suppose, because there's nothing to link him to the offence.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the crime scene investigation, the examination has to be thorough. That's why it's really important to lock the scenes down straight away so that nothing's disturbed. And I think that I don't think that happened in this case because he was able to get to the car. He knew where the car was, so he could put his DNA in there. It's really easy for him to write himself out of being a suspect just by the fact that his DNA and his forensic fingerprint can be easily explained at the scene in the car, because it's like,
he knew it.
He knew
it, so he could say, I used to drive in her car all the time and stuff. Would you be shocked if I told you that they never, ever, ever took any kind of DNA or anything from him? They never got his profile, not even once. There was a lot of people actually that could have been classed as Denny suspects if they had done a thorough investigation that they didn't even start investigating at all. In fact, they were so tunnel visioned on Stephen that there was no other investigation on pretty much anyone else.
That's I don't know. I won't cast aspersions on my fellow law enforcement officers, but that's not something that I would personally do. I think I would, anyone who was even remotely connected to the, you still hear me?
Yes.
Anyone who's even remotely connected to the to her,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd be getting DNA profiles, even just to take them as, because if, say, for example, they went through the car and they found DNA profiles of an unsub, they would take elimination DNA or fingerprints from those people so that they can eliminate them. Because if they found a DNA profile, say, of a person they didn't know, and then they took DNA samples from every person that was involved with her, and that didn't match to any of those people, then obviously it's none of the people they took DNA from, so they need to go looking somewhere else.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah, it staggers me that they didn't get any DNA profiles from anyone else but the people they put away.
Yeah, that's pretty much what they did. They just focused on the Avery family, and no one else was part of the investigation. They didn't even ask Ryan for an alibi. He wasn't even asked what he did the night she went missing at all. There was no proof what he was doing. And some researchers over the time that I've read from Reddit and other researchers have come up with, they used to speak of the whole of October every Monday night. And funny enough, the first one Monday night they never spoke was the night she went missing, which is, again, doesn't make him guilty. It just raises some eyebrows. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Every Monday night.
There's a lot of anomalies in this case. I just can't understand why the investigators didn't really flesh those other leads out. I've only had a quick glance at it, but it just looks like it was quite a narrow focus.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing stopping them from casting their net very wide at the start, like locking down a whole bunch of houses, scenes, getting people in, taking DNA, canvassing neighbourhoods and that sort of thing. There's nothing stopping them from doing that at all at the very start. And then they narrow it from there, because you always start big and then work your way to a point, rather than coming with, a preconceived idea of who they may be looking at and just try and get everything to fit that person. You know, I don't know, it seems to be quite a narrow focus. But,
Oh, absolutely.
but I don't know the full facts of it, so it's
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so I'm going to throw in one little bonus question in there before I get to the final. And this is one that I did bring up to you today before we actually had this phone call, because I didn't think of it at the time, but it's such a significant question that I think I just have to. The question is it rare that she got shot in the head twice? To me, it seems like an overkill. Reminds me of like a hitman kill or like a drug deal. It's like a ghetto gangster. I know that sounds silly, but it just seems really overkill. It's weird. Like two shots to the head.
No, it's not unusual. I mean, but I think if it was one shot, I would be almost certain that it was a stranger.
Right.
But two or more, I think it was definitely someone that she knew, because it was
personal.
Yeah, and if it was just a random thing, it's just like a bang and then they run off, or that sort of scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the homicides that I've been involved with, the damage has been quite significant. Like chopped up with axes and stabbed and all sorts of stuff. So it's not uncommon at all for the victim is known to the offender, that the offender just unleashes on that person rather than just be quite a random spur of the moment act, which might only involve one shot. If it's two or more, I'm pretty sure that it would be someone that wasn't a stranger to her.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so my final question is, I'm going to split it into two parts. First part, after reviewing all this, in your professional opinion, does Ryan make a good Denny suspect?
Yes, absolutely, because it's based on the circumstances that you've shown me today.
Yep.
He had access to the victim, he had access to the scenes, he inserted himself. His characteristics seem suspicious to me as well.
Yep.
The only real thing I couldn't figure out was why, a motive. But you said to me that they were actually intimate.
So they dated for 5 years in college, and then she and her roommate Scott, which was Ryan's best friend, all still kind of had that affection. They still hung in small groups and stuff, so there was still always a connection there. It was alleged that there was some kind of violence, but it hasn't ever been proven. That's why I said the word alleged. And so you've got that kind of backstory, and there was an email that she sent, and she said, to one of her friends, I know Ryan still likes me, I can see by the way he looks at me, and so there was definitely something there. Now, in just a quick backlog of that, when he first initially told the cops who he was, he only referred himself as a friend. It wasn't until later someone said, that's her ex-boyfriend. So he didn't even disclose, he tried to keep that quiet. And I just always think to myself, is that because for these reasons that usually the ex-partners and all that do usually get looked at first because of that connection?
I think so. I think that was the case. I mean, it's hard to say, but it would make sense to me to try and minimise your involvement in it and then throw the attention off you by being helpful.
Yes.
And having access and being able to manipulate the crime scenes is just huge. But the fact that they were intimate, I think, and there was 2 gunshots to the head. It didn't look like there was any other. Like she wasn't. Was she sexually assaulted at all? Was there anything?
So when they found her obviously burnt, and she was You could tell that she had been cut up and disposed of. They don't know. They have no proof. All they have is the fragments of her head, which indicate 2 bullet wounds to the skull. And that's obviously more than likely a cause of death. So the sexual part of it, the nature, no one will ever know, unfortunately, unless the killer kind of goes, yep, this is actually what happened. Whether it was a rage thing, a sexual thing, a jealousy thing, no one knows. No one absolutely knows. Which brings me back to my last part, and the last part of the question is, in your professional opinion, with all the documents that you have been provided with Ryan, would he make a prime suspect?
Yeah, I would say yes. I would say yes. Just based on everything that you show me, it would seem odd for him not to be investigated in some way, or to just from what I've seen, which is very, very brief. I haven't seen his interview tapes or anything like that. So, but just the facts that he's involved with her and his partner, knew her, he would have to be a suspect. It would be remiss not to take him as a suspect. Like I said before, you always cast your net quite wide at the start,
and then you narrow it down.
Yeah, and then narrow it down.
Yeah.
So yeah, he would be probably. I don't know the full facts on it, but it seems odd that he wasn't taken more seriously or looked at it a little harder.
Well, yeah, that's the burning question. Why wasn't anyone really investigated properly? But that's part of this making a murder case. It's all over the place, and they had one motive, and that was to get Steve Avery. So they had got what they wanted, and they stopped the lawsuit. They stopped the depositions against themselves from being in trouble from the wrong lawful case that they did before. So yeah, I just want to thank you again so much. This has been awesome. We really appreciate this, and for I know again with your work, and we have to protect that because of the cases you do and stuff. For you to actually come out and give us an idea of how the mind works for the criminals, it's really awesome. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. So, thank you so much. And, this has been great.
All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good information given in that interview. I found it very interesting. He said 85% about tend to know the victim, and then he started to throw in some other things. Mistaken identity, serial killers, things like that. That kind of make the which kind of makes it more even the percentage even go up higher than that, right? Because that's probably not the case in this case. To me, probably one of the most interesting things that he said, and he even kind of said it as a byproduct. When you asked him about the 136 visits in 12 days, and the term that he used was not a focus of the investigation, right? That's kind of what he said, and he said it in kind of an offhand way, which makes me almost think that with that 136 visits, which she identified as very odd, that somehow her house was a focus of the investigation. Of course, we don't know anything about that because there's no reports on that, and Uyghur's a fucking liar. But that's an interesting way to think about it with that many visits as it being a focus of the investigation. Clearly, Scott Blador didn't move out. Ryan was living there, so the forensic evidence is tampered. But they still went there that many times. What were they doing there? We just don't know. We don't have. We know about 7 things they took from the house. I don't think we know what all of them are. We don't have evidence tags for that. We've never seen the phone bills. It's just I found it that particular comment was very insightful. I also I tend to resonate with the cell phone pings, and I think people were probably thinking about that. And it was really cool to hear him bring up the the cell towers, like you said. I don't know. What did everybody else think?
No.
I found it, well, what you were saying, Big Jeff, I mean, 136 times, were they cleaning it up? I mean, that's always a possibility that they're cleaning up any signs or traces that were left there. For me, there's, especially with the 2 shots to the head, I had always thought, possibly, drug related, execution style, as well as Kelly had. But to hear that it's personal, I mean, that opens up, even beyond Ryan, some suspects for me. There's a lot of potential just with that specific statement as to who was close to her and who that could have been. It almost moves the focus in a different direction for me.
I hear what you're saying, and I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. One thing I've always thought is that there really is kind of 2 crimes going on here. When I first started doing this, I don't want to believe that law enforcement killed Teresa Halbach. I want to believe that they exploited some other very unfortunate situation, whether that unfortunate situation ranged from from an overdose or a traffic accident, maybe even to somebody else killing her. That they got their hands on her, and it was the mutilation and the burning was something that was done to frame Avery, and not necessarily done by the person who killed her. So that is that would really, I think, confound someone like Investigator T if there's really kind of 2 crimes going on at once there. I know that's not a popular theory that I have there, but it's one that always bugs me. We don't really know whether the same person who killed her is the same person who cut her up. And under Zellner's theory, we do know under her best any suspect, but we don't know, right? And if you open up the full spectrum, we just don't know.
Kelly, can you just share with everyone, because the way that you said it when we were discussing it beforehand about it's more of what it's more like as far as the way those shots were, because the way you worded it, it was like, oh my God.
Okay, so yeah, after the interview, I kind of we kept talking, and I obviously thanked him and said, thanks so much. He's like, anytime, I'm happy to help more if you need any more. I'm like, well, let me just get the list. Thank you so much. But yeah, so I said to him, going back to the 2 shots though, and he goes, yeah. I said, so you don't think it was could be drug related or some kind of, not an accident, but whatever? He's like, no, with crimes of passion or crimes that come out of someone that it depends on what you die of, whether it was out of rage, whether it was out of jealousy, whether it was out of whatever it was. But he's like, the first pop is to make sure that they're dead. You want them dead. So the first pop's a pop. But then he said the second pop is like a fuck you. Fuck you even in the afterlife. I hope you even take that all the way. Again, it goes back to what he was saying, what was it a crime of passion of? Was there a jealousy motivation? Was it a anger motivation? The anger one is like a pop, you're dead. I know you're dead, but here's your extra pop because I really don't ever want to see your face again. I want to destroy you because you destroyed me, kind of thing. And then I brought it back to the dismembering part. And I'm like, yeah, but being the fact that they knew her, wouldn't that be so hard for them to cut her up and burn her? And he's like, Kel, you have to remember one thing. When you've murdered someone, their mission is only one thought, and that's don't get caught. So you might be overlooking of the burning to rid of their DNA, to get rid of them being associated to her. And
Well, like I
that takes someone very intelligent to overthink that step, because most criminals, like he says, they're just shoot, bang, run, get the fuck out of there. And that's why a lot of them leave DNA, because they don't overthink it. But this is someone that's got a lot of thought in it, that is intelligent, or you can swing it to the other side and say it could have something to do with law enforcement. Maybe they found her body and then they got rid of it because they know all about DNA.
So you started to say something, Millbilly?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say.
We just actually, the way all of this started is Kelly and Kate and I were sitting one day in Discord and just talking about suspects, and we thought, well, hey, why don't we just record it? And then Kelly had the awesomeness to do what she did, but we sat there and started looking and just digging apart at the details and some of the things we were pulling up on Ryan before Zellner's response even came out. And this is one of them. I mean, all of these dropped calls. Justin Denny had gone through and looked, and there's, some interesting stuff. I mean, it's all speculation, but on this day, he's getting all these phone calls. This is the day before they find the RAV. And there's somebody that calls him 4 times that day. And one of them is like an hour before all these dropped calls. And then one is like an hour after. And then there's another person that calls like 3 or 4 times back to back. And I wish Justin Denny was on here, because him and I were talking about it and found it last night. But her brother, Mike, was the one who called just before and just after all those drop calls, as well as Kelly Pitson. And this one is, of course, the time period for Ryan where from 10:31 at 7:47 at night, that's his last call on the 31st. He doesn't make or get another phone call until 1:30 the next day in the afternoon. He's got all of that time unaccounted for, and you can see if you go throughout his phone bill, his phone's typically blowing up.
Yeah, he's a very active person on his phone.
But for us, when we were talking last night, it's just speculation, but it's really strange that he's getting calls up until those drop calls, and that's the only day he gets calls from Mike Hollenbach. Mike Hollenbach, that's it.
The popular guilter theory is that he was actually searching the Avery salvage yard in an unapproved search. That's the popular guilter theory that accounts for that. That they sent him on. Yeah.
So he was supposedly there on the 4th before they found the RAV. Ryan was.
Well, supposedly, that's the popular guilter theory, is that Ryan was up to something, but he was acting in concert with the law enforcement. It's a wild ass theory.
Interesting.
Just like anything else, yeah. Because Avery phone coverage on the Avery salvage yard stinks. So he might have been there. I don't think we have his pings associated with those calls. We just have the calls, right? So it's as good as a theory as any. He could have been planting the RAV with Coburn for all we know.
Or Mike could be saying, "Where's it going?" And he could be done at the time. Oh, it's done. We don't know.
That's right. We don't know. We do know that he is, I think, a very suspicious fellow. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Very suspicious. If you could pull that one up, Millbilly, that you had up just a second ago with that one there. That's his first series of calls after he's been dark for 17 hours. And where did them come back to reality?
This is what I had brought up before. I'm going to see if I can share. Millbilly, did you actually upload the ones I sent you on there from the phone numbers for the company that this goes to?
I don't believe I did.
Okay. It actually comes back to the place that on the fact that simply states that it's from the cemetery for religious affiliations. It's in there. He called the fax number 4 times, and then he's calling that. A lot of people think that he was calling the Board of Regulations for just the School of Nursing. But as I've stated before, I did all that in 2007, 2 years later, and even before that, all of that is done online. You pay online, you register online, you schedule your exam online, and you get your results online. So there's, for that to be coming up under the cemeteries, the religious cemeteries, and she was buried at a religious cemetery. All of that is just highly suspicious, at least to me. And I think it was to Just a Denny too, and Pop-Tart when we were looking at it today, because his Pop-Tart, the minute she pulled it up, she was in shock, wasn't she, Just a Denny?
Yeah, she went crazy. She's like, what is this? This does not make any sense at all. It was a big red flag when it came across her screen.
And that's the first calls after on the first, after he's been radio silent for 17 hours. And T1 had a great question last night when we were in Discord chatting, and we all started thinking about it. And he's like, well, why won't Ryan talk to Zellner? Why won't he get a lawyer and talk to her and clear himself, clear his name? And the one thing that just clicked in my head, I mean, it's not necessarily, if he's not guilty, he knows something. He knows something.
Yeah, well, he has a lot of problems with his memory. Is the real problem, isn't it? I mean, he can't remember when he saw Teresa on the 30th, what time it was, whether it was day, whether it was night. He supposedly dropped off something to Scott, and when asked what that thing was that he dropped off to Scott on the last day of that he ever saw, supposedly one of the friends who was good enough that he would organize a massive search party, he could not remember what that thing was that he dropped off to Scott. So he does have some memory problems. There are pills for that.
There are a lot of pills for a lot of things.
I could call it more of a selective memory. He chooses what he wants to remember and what he doesn't, really.
Yeah, I think so.
He can't remember what he dropped off to Scott. He can't remember when he dropped it off.
And he also had this magazine interview too, as I remember, where he said the last time he saw Teresa was in the cowgirl outfit. But I don't think he's since weighed in on whether that was the 30th or whether that was sometime before that. I think that that's just kind of off to the lost to history. God knows that when they reopened the case in 2017, I don't think he got a question about that.
I don't know. The more that we got from Zellner, all of it was huge. But I mean, for the rest of the panel, I mean, is he your number one Denny suspect? I mean, he's KZ's, but is he yours?
I don't think he's KZ's number one, Denny. My opinion is, especially if you read the state's response, the state has put sort of both barrels on procedurally barred. On you can't do this because it was brought up in Stevens. It wasn't brought up in Stevens' pro se motion in 2013. We're talking about a learning disabled indigent inmate who had really no access to counsel at all. For all practical purposes, and they're holding him to the best he could come up with in 2013. So with the state acting the way it is, to me, I don't care if Bear is a viable Denny suspect. Bear, that's Steven's dog from the backyard, right? Right. Because the fact of the matter is that the state is really thrown up this wall. I don't care who it is. If they meet the Denny requirement, I'm going to say yes. I'm not going to say that person shouldn't be considered. We should punt on this person as a suspect because it's unlikely that they did it. No, if they reach the Denny threshold, screw it. We're throwing it in to get Steven a new trial so Zellner can show the evidence that she has. She can't report on a lot of the stuff that she has because even the stuff that she has is procedurally barred. Meaning it wasn't brought up in any of the original appeals. I'm sure she's got a lot of new stuff that she can't even show because she's afraid it's going to be because she knows it's procedurally barred. The stuff that she has now, they're saying it's procedurally barred, and you heard Travis the other night when he was with us. He agrees that procedural bar is real, and that's going to be hard for Zellner to get over that bar, if you will. So screw it. I don't really necessarily care. I mean, it could have been some rando who killed Teresa. Steven needs a new trial because the trial he got was fair because the cops obviously framed him. That's where I stand about the best. Best, I don't know. by what value of best, I guess, is my question.
Yeah,
While you guys are talking, I just wanted to let you guys know I noticed something going back into the Ryan's phone records because you were talking about his heading over to meet up with Scott on Sunday. Well, he makes a phone call with Scott on Sunday, and it's the only phone call in his records.
He only made one phone call on Sunday?
1:30 in the afternoon.
Wow.
So there's another interesting.
Yep.
So you're saying that he called Scott at 1:30 in the afternoon on Sunday, and that's more than likely around the time he went over?
It possibly could be, but I also am pointing out the fact that it's the only phone call he made that day was to Scott.
Wow. Very interesting.
See, this is what it is. As Inspector T said, you've got the ones that are closest to her being the ones that should be looked at the most.
Yep. And it goes back to whitewashing her victimology or her as an individual.
Yeah, most definitely.
And that's the one thing that Investigator T did say, though, like, he was more shocked that they didn't take profiles of everyone that they knew. And he goes to me, it's not, he did say more after, it's not to also just, prove someone killed them. It's more to eliminate them. So when they were going through the RAV or whatever, they could compare fingerprints and go, okay, so Ryan's is in there, but we know that they have a friendship. So the chances of him being in that car are really high. So we can overlook those prints for now. They're looking for the prints that shouldn't be in the car, but they didn't take anyone around her profile, which just makes no sense. He goes, they start big and then they come in. But to me, they didn't even start big. They started little, and that was Stephen Avery.
Yep.
Kelly,
is that a short joke?
Kelly, there's one thing if you're going to go back and speak with him, I think it would be really awesome if he could do a victimology for us.
Yeah, I can definitely ask him. He did say to me, just if there's anything else that he wants us to look at, let him know. He's happy to help. Obviously, with his work schedule, he said, you'd have to give me a day or two to be able to find time. I'm like, yep, that's fine. And then I started writing a list as he was saying that of everything we could do. But yeah, definitely in for something like that.
Well,
Doesn't he know that we have a murder to solve?
I did say that. I said, we have a murder solve. You need to be on your game, please.
what we have of Stephen Avery's interviews and all his news reports and him talking to the media, he should be able to do a pretty good profile analysis of Stephen Avery.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Especially when they're interviewing him in the jail. And when Lorinsky talks to him, be interesting to get his perspective on what he would have did based on what information they were obtaining during his first interview.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Along the lines of that too, it would be interesting to know, Kelly, whether or not he felt that Stephen Avery rose to the threshold of having known her enough to do the 2 in the head.
I'd be
Of course,
What was that, Kate?
interested to hear as well.
You'd be interested to hear that as well.
I think the Russians were tapping Kate's mic.
I do too. She's probably got a bomb to drop, and they don't want anybody to hear it.
Were there any questions in the comments at all?
Let's see.
Or if you guys have any questions, write them down.
Travis said that Kelly, or you could show. Oh, you already saw that. You could show him KZ's victimology on her from her expert and see what he thinks about it. That might even be a good one as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good one. I'm writing all this down.
Travis, your live with Fenn was awesome. Thank
Yes,
you for that.
it was very good.
If you haven't watched that, please watch it. It's on Fenn's channel.
Any more things?
It was.
80 more things, yeah.
T1 asks, why was Teresa's family not making those calls, given LE her info and personal items, or was Ryan someone else's front man? Dun 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 dun.
Well, speaking of Ryan, since we love about Ryan, I have some other audio things I'd like to play. Like, this is quite strange. There's a bunch of reports to Sheboygan about her being spotted at a Taco Bell and a Walmart. And then Ryan does this.
Hi there. I'm part of the whole Look for Teresa search thing that's going on. Now, I know you may have gotten a couple calls recently about Sheboygan and her being fed tonight.
Yeah.
And I just talked to the lady whose husband is actually out there doing it. But I don't know what information she gave you guys, or did you guys get a hold of an investigator, or have they sent somebody an investigator's way?
In reference to Sheboygan?
To Sheboygan, right?
Yes, our investigators were notified.
They were notified. Somebody actually spoke to them physically?
That I'm not sure. I just gave the information to the investigator who was working on it, and he took it from there.
Okay, so he actually knows about this apparently.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. She said to me that somebody got a voicemail for one of the investigators, and I thought, voicemail's not going to work. But I guess I just wanted to make sure that the actual word got out. And I don't know what she said, but apparently it's the workers at the Taco Bell. I don't know if you knew that.
Okay. Yeah, I knew that too. I heard something about Walmart, and then I heard something about Taco Bell.
Right, the thing I said in Walmart earlier, which, they'd have cameras all over the place.
Right.
And the Taco Bell, I guess the people working at the drive-thru were the ones who seen her there. I guess I just didn't know what she had told you, that people that called me were all, shaken up and really kind of scrambling and forgetting stuff and remembering it. And I just kind of wanted to make sure that at least they got that stuff across to you guys.
Yep, that's exactly what I was told, and I transferred it to the investigator. So he was there, and he did take the call.
Okay, was it Mark?
Yeah.
Yep. Mark Uyghur?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe I'll give him a ring and, see if I have his card and his number and everything and see what's going on. I guess if I know he's awake now, I guess.
Okay, well, I'm not sure he is. This was 11 o'clock.
So it was 11 o'clock.
Yeah, about 11 or 11:30. So I don't know. I know that a lot of personnel are coming in early in the morning.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to try that then.
Right.
It's up to you. It's up to you. Whatever you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Inspector Killigus.
Yep. and
Yeah,
that's on
yeah.
the-
So, it'd be interesting to see, because he apparently he knows Mark, based on that, who we often call Wiegert. But we
Right.
should know Wiegert's phone number from the dispatch calls, right? Can we look? That's going to be an interesting.
There are a few documents out there that I know that we have all the Manitowoc's badge numbers and their phone numbers too, and their pager numbers. So I'm sure it's out there somewhere. Also in audio, you can hear them telling them their numbers too.
Yeah, he also had Pagel's phone number because he gave it to Pam of God, right?
Yep. They also had Leslie Lemieux's phone number, or they didn't have Leslie's number because they called Queso the night she's reported missing at 5 o'clock because they just got her plate info.
Oh, from Karen Hallbach.
But right before that, I don't know where they got it from. You hear Scott calls, Ryan's in the background. But right before that, Leslie Lemieux actually gives the plate information to the dispatcher to put in the report for the missing person. So where did she get that info from, and why are they trying to give it to her after she already obtained it?
Doesn't Scott call back? It's Scott or
Scott calls back too. Yes.
So one of them calls back and says, "I have the plate number."
Yeah, that's Scott. And then
Scott,
Scott also comes back about some items that he has that they might be interested in.
Wow.
They tell him to bring it to the sheriff's department and drop it off. We also have this audio from, now this is on the 11th of November. Stephen Avery.
I have a quick question, Melville. The one you just played, how did Ryan, do we know how Ryan got this information or who he was speaking to?
Yeah, he said it right in the call.
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
In the beginning, he said he talked to a friend of somebody that who heard about these tips.
Okay, so it didn't come in on the website they had up. He's doing his own research, or someone called him.
Yeah, he overheard it from somebody that notified him. Now we have this phone call to Queso. The lady calls in and states that there's a nasty remark on the Teresa Hallbach website. Dispatcher hangs up and then calls Ryan Hilligus, and this is what happens.
Ryan? Hey, it's Lori at the County Sheriff's Department.
Hey there.
I'm not sure if you're who's maintaining the website.
Oh, we know that there's a nasty remark on the guest, but we just erased it.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to bring it to your attention in case you didn't know. Somebody called here and said that, they saw it and they didn't like it and they didn't know who was on it. And I said, I know.
Yep, and that worked because we already contacted the web designer who's in California and he erased it for us.
Okay, what was it? What did he just
well, I think so. Something's probably going to have to be recorded about it. I don't know what. I mean, and basically, I'll give it to you in the almost exact terms. Sorry for my language.
Or do you want to emailing it to me? Would you be more comfortable with that, or you want to tell me?
It was basically to the point. It said the name was Stephen Avery. They signed in with Stephen Avery.
Yeah.
And basically said, I fucked your daughter, I burned her and tied her up, and I'm sorry, but I needed some pussy.
Oh,
Yeah, which is horrible. Hey, sweetheart. Okay. What the team, did he get all that stuff? Do you know I just know that? And I don't know what.
Hold on a second, Ryan.
Okay.
Thank you for. Double B and Farrell. attention because somebody called here.
Right.
I figured you know, if I had your number here and she'd know.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's just, so like, okay, yeah, no, it is to our attention. I don't,
okay.
you know, the web designer says there's not really a way to get back to it. You know, you can send anything.
Well, yeah, you can erase it, but
So,
I don't know.
well, we erased it. I don't know if we're gonna have to close it or what. Maybe, you know.
Let's watch it a little bit. So,
Right, exactly. Okay, thank you for telling me though.
okay, and also, just to let you know, I mean, I drove by that way on my way in. If you guys have any problems with people, so there was lots of cars and stuff.
Okay.
And
well, everybody's been good, and actually, I've been kind of pushing the press out of here and keeping people off the road, and they've been very good with
okay,
me.
yeah. Just if you need any help, keep
Okay.
going here. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Oh my God. There was, for me, if I would have heard something about somebody I loved, that kind of stuff, there was no emotion or, when he's talking about her being raped, and there's nothing there.
Yeah, it was a business meeting, right? It wasn't. There was no passion. Yeah.
Stephen Avery is in jail, so why would somebody sign in as Stephen Avery and state those things? Keep in mind, the day after this is when we get that Tom Derpinghouse call about the burn the bitch statement. I mean, the cops are already putting out there that they found bones, so it's like people are trying to cement what they're saying with the tips they're bringing in.
Yeah. Or some dickhead, one or the other.
I just think it's funny that they can't trace it. Makes that comment about.
Yeah, why couldn't it have gone back to an IP address or something?
Oh, you can trace that. Oh, you don't trust me. No. They couldn't trace it. Just didn't feel like tracing it. They just thought it was some clown, probably.
But there's no emotion. There was absolutely no emotion in his voice at all. It didn't affect. It didn't sound like it affected him at all.
No, there was no emotion. But if you hear the way he's like reading out the statement, he actually sounded amusing. He's like, and we burnt the pussy. Like, what was so funny about that?
Yeah.
Like, you actually hear him chuckle. It's like, are you serious?
You know, I didn't quite catch that. That's why, you know, man, I'll tell you what, that's a good catch. I didn't quite catch that out of that because I was just so disgusted by it. Yeah, it's an awesome catch. Can you play it again, Billy? Just that part?
Hold on.
I did have a quick question from the audience. Crockett wanted to know if anybody is aware of the Catholics, what their feelings are on cremation. I did read somewhere online that they're opposed to spreading the ashes.
Yeah.
But I don't know personally about if they're opposed to cremation.
I know a lot of Catholics that have been cremated, so. But
okay.
a lot of times, I mean, it's economically driven a lot of times more than other things. So Catholic cemeteries tend to be huge.
Just wanted to clarify, that's the 11th, right, Billy?
Yep.
Hello.
Brian? Yeah, it's Lori at the Calumet Sheriff's Department.
Hey there.
Just wanted to bring it to your attention in case you didn't know.
And that worked because we already contacted the.
What was it? What I need to.
Well, you know, I think so. Something's probably going to have to be recorded about it. I don't know what. I mean, and basically, I'll give it to you in the almost exact terms. Sorry for my language.
Or do you want to? Do you have a way of emailing it to me? Would you be more comfortable with that, or you would
well,
tell me?
It was basically to the point. It said the name was Stephen Avery. They signed in with Stephen Avery.
Yeah.
And basically said, you know, I fucked your daughter, I burned her and tied her up, and I'm sorry, but I needed some pussy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is.
Whoa. See, I told you, I heard the laugh. I'm like, what the fuck? Why is that funny?
Wow.
Sorry, but I needed some pussy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is horrible. Hey, Blair.
Okay.
Hey, Bladorn, he says. Scott Bladorn is right there.
They're always
Wow.
together. Every time one of them calls or they talk to law enforcement, they're right there by each other.
Oh,
Just like they're the ones signing in and signing out on the 7th. The phone call to Sheboygan about the Sheboygan tape happened on the 6th, the evening of the 6th. So what did Scott and Ryan talk to Wiegert and them, or possibly Deb Strauss, because she signs it right before them. And then they leave, she signs out.
Deb Strauss.
I also remember someone bringing it up, and I don't remember where, so forgive me. But on the 3rd, before they even knew, or Scott had even been called from Teresa's stepfather come over to tell him, is Teresa, where has she been? Have you seen her? That Ryan called him during the day, during his work shift, which he'd never done before. It's almost like they're checking with each other.
The more we dig, the more answers we get, and the more questions we have.
Absolutely.
No matter which part of this case you look at, which person you look at, whether it be law enforcement, Ryan, the Averys, Dassies, other people.
Yeah.
The German.
I will. Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that Investigator T did say to me at the end, he did say to me, question, and he goes, and I know we've talked about this before, and I went, yeah, and he goes, you guys look for all these answers to see where, like, she left a salvage yard, and I'm like, yep, he goes, is there any proof that she ever made it home that day? And I went, well, and he goes, besides the fact that her last ping is in that area,
no,
there's no proof she did not make it home that day.
She vanished just like Lori Deppis.
That's right.
And all they found was a car.
I just looked at his record, and yes, he called him at 2:19 on the 3rd.
Which is in the middle of his workday. And
Yep.
Ryan obviously would know because that was supposedly one of his best friends.
Well, yeah, they played football together. They went to high school together. They grew up together. I mean, they got to have some kind of bond. They're on the same football team together. Usually people that play football in high school, they end up continuing a relationship for the rest of their lives. Am I wrong?
No, but I didn't. Looking through some photos of Scott's wedding, I was kind of surprised I didn't see Ryan in any of the photos.
Maybe they had a falling out.
Maybe.
And that's a question from Calf. She says, are Ryan and Scott still friends today?
I believe that I could be wrong, but I think that Ryan's she's definitely on Scott's sister's friends list, but I don't know if he is on Scott's wife's friends list. I think he might.
Let's talk about this day planner. What have you guys been able to learn?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Cal.
I just wanted to just really quickly, because we were talking about friends list, I just wanted to bring up something that Calf found. Where is Calf? We need Calf. But she found, how's this with Ryan? She found that on Ryan's friends list is Wes Bonnell on it, right? Wes Bonnell is in Teresa's own diary said it was her, she thought she met her soulmate tonight. But Ryan has got him as a friend. Out of all people, Ryan knows obviously what was in that diary, yet he went and connected to the soulmate. Is that another control thing? Like, I'm thinking outside the box, like, is that another way of inserting himself into her life? He went out and found in her diary, she mentions this guy as her soulmate, and he's gone and become friends with him on Facebook as of today. Is that like another control part of this aspect? Just wanted to throw out there, and that's hats off to Calf because she found that.
Well, there's one thing as well with that. Wesley's sister is pretty high up in Calumet FOIA. in the records control. So maybe he's keeping that connection to keep his eyes and ears on information as well.
Yeah.
Amanda Bonnell is his sister.
Well, I've been shocked on some of the things you guys have brought to my attention. That's for sure, especially Calf.
Yes.
She's scary.
She's
In a
got a
good way.
connection between
In a good way.
she got a connection between the deputies and the hull box. We'll talk about that.
Scary.
Yeah.
Digging.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying she's scary with digging all this stuff up. It's
So to answer your question, Billy, I think that if you look at Teresa's cell phone bangs, the what's her name, Keel, the one that Teresa takes and definitely write something down. I think that's an 11:30 call. We talked about this on the live that we did a couple of lives ago. That cell tower ping was from her home tower. And that's a long time before she actually had to leave to be able to go to Schmitz, which is in I'm going to get it wrong if I say New Holstein. Is that where that is?
That's correct.
So it is quite possible in my mind, that she ran some errands, that she took down that number, and that she was able to get home prior to prior to leaving, and that probably would have been an accident that she left that there. I mean, you'd think that had her appointments for that day. If that's at her house, she left it there by accident. But the next one that she gets, which is help me out, Denny, like 1:30 or something like that. The next call that she makes, she also makes a note about that one, right? In her own handwriting. It's very, very close. I mean, it is doubtful that she had enough time to take that call, to make that note, and get in the vicinity of that White Law Tower in the amount of time between that second call and that second ping. That's cutting it awful close. So I don't know how good of an argument Zellner has for that first note, but that second one is a little bit more cutting it close. So I think she has a reasonable argument there. Also, it's listed in the state's response, as you well know, that it's not for sure documented in the Calumet evidence chain that it was indeed Ryan that provided the day planner to the Calumet Sheriff's Office, right? I don't think that somebody said that it was Ryan who gave it to them. So that's something that the state pounces on and says, okay, well, you don't know for sure that Ryan gave that. You haven't proved that. And that's part of their definition of insufficiently pled, was that you didn't you didn't really connect all the dots to the level that you needed to be able to say, yeah, this was definitely him, beyond a shadow of a doubt, enough to get a new trial out of it.
I think it was Kelly Pitson who actually said when she got there that Ryan had already looked at her appointment for day planner and gotten the numbers and had called one of them already. So I think it was Kelly, and I think that's in Zellner's 2019 motion. And I think it was Fassbender's report.
So we have no documentation of them actually obtaining the so-called day planner.
Nope.
I know that's shocking, Billy.
Was it a part of the paperwork they found strung along 147 when they found the audio box phone?
Business paperwork could be.
Where's her registration for her car? That's never been seen.
It looks in pretty good shape for having been on the side of the road for 4 days.
It did rain too, right?
Yep.
Saturday night.
Yeah.
And the thing with that day planner is, you can tell it's got a date on the bottom of it, and it's got the 30. What is it? I think it was the 30th,
Yep.
the night before. So you can tell she's printed it off on that because it's come up the day she's printed it because it's on the bottom if you look closely. So it just gives that how do you explain it? It gives it that authenticness that it was already printed out rather than being printed off. Because I've heard a lot of people go, yeah, but couldn't have just been uploaded to like a drive and then printed off. And I'm like, no.
Where's the original document? Because this is obviously a photo. Where's the actual document with her actual handwriting on it? With the actual ink from a pen.
It's almost like they've scanned it and sent it in a digital form.
And do we know that this is actually Teresa's handwriting? I mean, yes, we have those phone calls that confirm that she was writing stuff down while she was driving with this, but does anybody in this community have the actual photo or document with the actual ink on the paper? Because I have not seen it.
I haven't seen it, but we can always get her day planner here and compare it to her diary notes and just see if I know none of us are handwriting experts, but you could see like a pattern like with her writing. We could always do a comparing thing.
I wonder if it's possible to FOIA it because it does seem to be pictures of everything.
Yep.
But do we even know the evidence number of the day planner to be able to
It's
FOIA
Exhibit 45 in the 2019 motion, but I haven't found it in the other.
in the master evidence list?
No.
Well,
Kate says it seems to match her handwriting from her diary and checks.
the real question is, where did it come from?
Yeah, that's right.
But
Do you, Millbilly, does it look to you like it's a document that's been scanned by a computer and then uploaded?
definitely. It's a copy of it, photocopy, scanner, whatever. It's not the actual document. I'd rather have a picture of the actual document than that. Be honest, but yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Kelly, for reaching out to your friend. That was awesome, and hopefully he'll be able to do other things for us. And I'm interested to find out what you guys find out about all these phone stuff when you guys are done. Because it's quite interesting.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. If I could make a closing comment, Millbilly.
Feel free.
The state's response was over the top. I mean, they are clearly scared. They're pulling out all the stops to try and get Zellner procedurally barred. They're desperate not to see the evidence. We know if we rewind the clock back to 1985, that Peg Lautenschlager, who is the current Attorney General's mother, was the one who actually did the final whitewash of the Avery brief. And as we read those transcripts that were released by Erica's Banana Man actually went through, we're learning more and more about what's going on there. And we've read before the Peg L whitewash of the 85, and I can't believe that was her proudest moment as Attorney General, having a whitewash that having to whitewash that incident and really literally cover it up. And I wonder, Josh Call, as I call you out right now, how you feel about having to follow in your mother's footsteps, to take these procedural routes, to be able to try and curb and keep Stephen Avery in jail, without listening to the merits of his case. So I think we need to get on the Twitter sphere. I know that Reality, you are a big Twitterer. We have to start a Twitter campaign, really getting Josh Call the attention he deserves for this. I think we should hashtag it Mommy Dearest, and start to call out the fact that the state has not addressed the merit of Zellner's claim. It's all about procedure, all about technicality.
I agree.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for joining us, and see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.